The harbor master yelled at Nico in front of a group of paddleboarders and told him to stop dragging junk onto the public shoreline. The pier was technically condemned and the city hated when locals swam near it. Hearing the scolding, two paddleboarders laughed and asked if he was trying to build a raft out of garbage. Nico lifted the dripping plastic container he had found underwater and felt ridiculous standing there in his wetsuit. He had been diving along the broken pilings for stray fishing line when he spotted a corner of hard plastic wedged under a beam. It looked like camera gear at first, so he wrestled it free and kicked to the surface, thinking at least he would salvage something useful. The box was heavier than expected and covered in a thick mat of algae. Back on the concrete, he popped the latches with stiff fingers. A mix of stale brine and mold spilled out. Inside sat a black device about the size of a car remote, a short USB cable wrapped around it, and a laminated card with numbers and smeared words. The device was labeled Treasure. Nico recognized the brand because he listened to tech podcasts during long drives to dive spots. Hardware wallet. He wiped the laminated card and saw a list of words with numbers beside them. Some words intact, some blurred into stains, a few numbers missing. It was not a complete phrase. As he crouched over the find, the harbor master came closer, demanding ID. Behind them, the paddleboarders kept making jokes about treasure hunters. Nico ignored everyone and focused on the wallet while the surf pushed foam onto his boots. Something about the whole scene felt off in a way that pushed him forward instead of scaring him away. He slipped everything into his mesh dive bag and left without answering another question. The first mini-victory was discovering the device still had no visible cracks. The first setback arrived seconds later when he realized someone had once tried to protect the seed phrase yet lost it anyway. And the second setback came when he understood he had no clue whether powering the device on would ruin whatever future choices he still had. That uncertainty followed him all the way home, where a bigger complication was waiting. His landlord met him at the stairway and pointed at the wet trail dripping from the dive bag. The man grumbled about salt water ruining the concrete again. Nico apologized and hurried to his room. The moment he laid the treasure on the table, he felt watched even though the blinds were closed. He searched online for information about found hardware wallets. The results insisted that without a complete seed phrase or correct PIN, the device was useless. One forum warned that some models wiped themselves after a few wrong attempts. That line sank into him like a weight belt. He called his cousin Diego, who loved giving financial advice even though he never followed any himself. Diego cracked up and told him he had basically found a waterproof brick. He warned him to dump it at a police station before someone claimed it was stolen off a docked boat. Nico hung up unsatisfied. He needed a safe place to test the device, so he paid for a pass at a coworking space downtown. He did not want to risk connecting the treasure to his own laptop at home full of half-downloaded dive footage. The coworking space had clean loaner computers and fast-wired internet. A staff member blocked him when he tried to sit down with the wetsuit still dripping from his backpack. Policy banned wet gear in the open area. Nico stuffed the suit into a plastic bag and shoved it into a locker. Mini setback number 1. Once seated, he connected the cable. The treasure screen flickered on. It demanded a PIN. For blocks waiting. On the laminated card, someone had scribbled a 4-digit number. The last digit was half erased and could be a 5 or 6. He tried the more obvious guess first. Wrong. He tried the second possibility. Wrong again. The device displayed attempts left 2. Mini failure number 2. A woman with headphones who noticed his stress asked if he needed help. She recognized the device instantly and warned him one more wrong attempt might trigger increasing lockouts. She suggested stepping away. Nico nodded but did not move. The setbacks were stacking faster than he expected, and he had not even explored the seed phrase yet. Still, something about the box stuck under that pier refused to let him quit. He opened a cheap notebook and carefully copied every legible word from the card. 7 had the word window next to it. 8 read harbor. 11 looked like mango. 14 was half gone but maybe began with the letter F. 22 was a complete smudge. He searched the official documentation for how treasure seed phrases worked. 24 words from a specific dictionary. 1 wrong word and the entire recovery failed. The woman with the headphones leaned closer and suggested checking the card under brighter light. Nico thanked her and moved near a wide window. The sun hit the card and revealed faint indents under the smeared ink. Someone had pressed the pen hard enough to leave grooves. Mini breakthrough number 1. He traced the indentations with his finger. The groove beneath the blurred 22 looked like it began with the shape of an A. Maybe the word was among the shorter ones on the official list. That gave him something to work with. He used the coworking scanner to make a high-resolution image of the card. After adjusting the contrast, the indentations stood out more clearly. Mini breakthrough number 2. A different employee came over saying his session on the loaner laptop was ending soon because someone else had booked it. Nico saved the scans and packed up. Mini setback number 3. But he now had tactile clues. Real lines dug by someone who once sat and wrote this phrase with the intention to protect it. The weight of that intention pressed on him as strongly as the weight of the water had when he pulled the box out from the pilings. He walked out with the feeling that the next step was no longer technical. It required understanding who had once owned this device and why it had ended up underwater. And that trail was about to take him somewhere he had not expected. The next morning he visited a legal aid clinic in Little Havana. The waiting room was cramped with mismatched chairs and a flickering TV stuck on a local news loop. He spoke with a young lawyer who listened quietly as Nico described the dive, the box, the device, and the 2 failed pin attempts. The lawyer explained that found property must be reported, but Nico should not try transferring anything until they confirmed legal ownership. He also warned that if the wallet was tied to investigations, interacting with it might bring questions. The lawyer mentioned an option to hire a cryptoforensic expert who could identify whether the addresses tied to the device appeared in public records. If the coins belonged to someone missing or deceased, their family might still be entitled to them. After leaving the clinic, Nico stopped at a print shop and enhanced the scanned card once more. The faint grooves under the smudges became slightly clearer. This time he noticed something new. The groove under number 14 curved upward in a particular way common to words starting with FL. That narrowed the possibilities to a handful of seed words. Mini breakthrough number 3. When Diego visited that night, he brought takeout and a smug grin. Nico showed him the enhanced card. Diego grew quiet as he traced the marks. He pulled out his phone and searched for news near the region where the pier was located. He found a story about a missing programmer who disappeared after a boating accident 4 years earlier. Authorities never recovered his hardware wallet. The article mentioned that friends said he had laminated his backup phrase. Mini twist. The pier in the article photo looked identical to the one Nico dove under. Everything tightened at once. There was now a real person tied to the wallet. A missing person who had likely died at sea. That turned the discovery from a random find into something heavier. The forensic expert worked in a modest office above a bakery. The air smelled like warm dough. She examined the treasure carefully, checked the model, and plugged its identifier into a database. She found that the associated addresses had received large purchases of Bitcoin years ago and had not moved since. No criminal flags. No sanctions. Mini breakthrough number 1. She calculated the current value and said the total was deep into 8 figures. Nico felt the room tilt. The lawyer reviewed the missing programmer's probate file. A sister in Orlando was listed as next of kin. The estate had been closed with no trace of the digital assets. Mini twist number 2. If the seed phrase could be reconstructed, the legal heir would likely gain control. Nico could request a finder's fee. That was all. He felt strange relief. For months he lived paycheck to paycheck running dive tours and cleanup dives. Yet the idea of keeping someone else's life savings felt like wearing another person's wetsuit. Wrong fit from the start. Diego reacted differently. He said Nico was insane for giving anything up. But the expert had already started running pattern matching software using the indent shapes. It produced dozens of plausible combinations that passed basic checksum rules. After days of work, the software found one phrase that allowed a read-only view. Mini breakthrough number 2. The coins were untouched. The lawyer contacted the sister. She drove down and saw the device for herself. Her hands shook as she touched the laminated card and said she had always wondered what her brother had forgotten on the boat before the accident. They reached an agreement. The court approved it. Nico would receive a generous finder's fee. She would receive control of the assets. The clinic would receive a donation. It was not the ending that Diego wanted. But Nico knew it was the only ending that would let him sleep. The abandoned pier was demolished months later. The city built a safer boardwalk, and Nico helped document the underwater removal for a coastal nonprofit that later hired him part-time. His YouTube channel gained steady traction after he shared a non-specific version of the story without names or amounts. He upgraded his old hatchback, bought reliable dive gear, and finally moved to an apartment where the shower did not leak into the neighbor's kitchen. Small victories, but real ones. Sometimes he wondered what life would have been like if he had kept everything. A big boat with his name on it. A condo with a view of the bay. But whenever that fantasy drifted in, he remembered how Elena had looked when the wallet opened and she realized her brother had not vanished empty-handed. He also remembered the moment underwater when his hand brushed against the plastic box and he mistook it for trash. That moment had split his life into before and after. Now when he dove near old piers, he checked every crevice, not because he expected another fortune, but because he knew how often the stories people lose end up resting in the places everyone else forgets. He carried that thought with him on every descent. A quiet reminder that the real treasure had been the chain of choices he made once he surfaced with the box and chose not to ignore what he had found.